In today's video, I'm going to show you a little bit of a Sandbox Overhaul mod that I've been working on. Now, I've dabbled with changing Halo 3 Sandbox before we even got official mod tools about a year ago. I started with a mod I called Combat Devolve, and the goal of it was to make some weapons mimic older iterations of themselves, and then I would add a twist to it or give it an alternate fire mode or something. This mod was my first attempt at tweaking the sandbox back when all we had was assembly, and it was really just a way for me to experiment with the sandbox and see what works and what doesn't. As you could probably expect, it was very messy and probably not the most balanced thing. That being said, I did learn a lot from it and came up with some cool ideas that I'm going to carry over to my new mod. My new mod is heavily inspired by the Vengeful Vadam's Reach Evolved mod and Ruby of Blue's Campaign Rebalance mod. Both of these guys are at the top of their game when it comes to rebalances and have a ton of knowledge on Halo's sandbox design. Each mod has a long list of changes made to each respective game, and it's pretty impressive that they are able to pull it off without official mod support. Now that the MCC has official mod support, it will be super easy to make changes to both the campaign levels and multiplayer maps. The changes that I made to my Sandbox Overhaul are a combination of things that I've observed being talked about within the community, and changes that I just like personally. I've tweaked things that might be seen as a little controversial by your average Halo 3 enjoyer, such as the Spartan laser. I'm only going to highlight a few changes that I've made for now because trust me, there are too many, and I want to keep the video as short as possible. I'm also still actively tweaking and adding changes to the mod, but yeah, let's get into the first change. First up on the changes is the HUD. From the moment the mod tools came out and the moment I saw it up on the mod nexus, I've been using Crevel's Halo 3 Infinite HUD. I know Infinite's HUD has been yet another controversial topic for Halo fans, but I genuinely think it looks really good in Halo 3. Everything from the motion tracker, the shield bar, and the little inventory corner just looks so clean. I'll be sure to link this mod in the description of the video. Now next up is something that I thought just makes a lot of sense, and I don't know why vanilla Halo 3 went the other way with this. I always personally thought that dual wielding felt significantly underpowered in Halo 3, and I didn't know how bad it was until I started modding Halo. The reason they felt this way is because Bungie implemented a damage percent decrease and an accuracy nerf for dual wielding. Now, I've completely done away with the damage nerfs that dual wielding has received, because I feel like you shouldn't be doing less damage for picking up two weapons. I've also largely removed the accuracy nerfs for dual wielding, but this may change from one weapon to another depending on how broken they might be. Taking a damage and accuracy nerf for dual wielding kinda defeats the purpose of it, and I wanted it to feel like you're actually getting double the firepower out of it. Movement in Halo 3, depending on what your FOV is set to, can feel a little sluggish at times. So what I've done is I slightly tuned all speeds and accelerations to be a noticeable increase, but not overly cracked like you're playing a Doom or Quake game. I've also slightly bumped up the jump velocity, but this might get tweaked later so that it doesn't break maps. Alright, so now we're going to move on to weapons that I've changed. I'm not going to show each weapon, so instead I'll highlight the changes that I thought were most interesting. First up for the weapon changes is the assault rifle. So for my changes, I had the Halo Infinite assault rifle in mind. I started this by adding a 1.75 times zoom onto the weapon. I tightened up the firing bloom a bit to make it more accurate at longer ranges. I increased the magazine size to 36, and then I bumped up the projectile velocity a bit. Okay, so do we even talk about how bad the Halo 3 shotgun is? Seriously, performance-wise, sometimes you're better off just going for melees than waiting to shoot the gun. What I did to make this feel like a real shotgun was drastically increase the range. I also decreased the spread of the shells, and then I slightly bumped up the pellet damage of the shells as well. Alright, on to the controversial heavy weapon. I increased the charge time of the Spartan laser by 1 second. I buffed the maximum range of the projectile itself. I decreased the shots per fire on the Spartan laser, although it's still capable of one-shotting people in multiplayer. You can also still one-shot light vehicles depending on where you aim. I ultimately gave it the ability to EMP vehicles, making it a long-ranged vehicle disabler. I made these changes because I feel the Spartan laser interrupts the flow of combat with vehicles in big team battle. The rocket launcher only got one major change, but it's a cool one. I managed to re-add the lock-on system from Halo 2. I didn't want it to end up as a Spartan Laser 2.0, so I edited the lock-on and guided rocket speeds. Another super overlooked weapon that I've changed is the plasma pistol. I bumped up the firing rate to be a bit noticeable. I made the normal bolts a little more deadlier. I've reduced the time it takes to charge and overcharge a bolt. And finally, I gave the overcharged bolt damage values from Combat Evolve to make this weapon more of a threat. Last up is the Brute Shot. The major change I made to the weapon itself is that its melee does a bit more damage and impacts the physics of the game a bit more. So now you can send objects in the environments flying. Speaking of flying, with the changes that I made to the walk speed and jump height, you can brute shot bounce significantly higher now. These changes make the brute shot a valuable sandbox tool. We're getting close to the end of the video now, so I'll try and summarize the vehicle changes coming up. First up is that I reintroduced the Warthog turrets overheating, since the Spartan laser no longer snipes them out of existence. Because of how I balanced the rocket and the Spartan laser, I gave both the Hornet and the Banshee an energy shield. On the Shade turret, I've sped up the turn speeds along with changing how it fires. And lastly, for vehicles like the Chopper, I sped up the turn rate to make them a bit easier to control, and I also tweaked the weapons to be a bit more deadlier. Like I said previously, my mod is super inspired by the Vengeful Vadim and Ruby of Blues mods, so if you haven't played either of those, I highly recommend it. But yeah, that's it for the preview. See ya.